Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion with the pros, the cons, the ones that have taken a side, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
This land is our land now.
As the world turns on its axis, bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
We ain't giving up no river that belong to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain.
Ladies and gentlemen, all of our brothers and sisters, welcome again to one of Globespan 24/7 program. Tonight we have Mr. Timothy Jonas, and of course we have Mr. GHK, gentleman who has been in this program month after month and has become more of a cornerstone on Globespan. So I want to welcome all of our brothers and sisters with us tonight as we enter into this discussion. And I want to remind everyone that Globespan January coming would enter into its 7th year, and it's a platform that's encouraging discussions and conversations between the politicians, civic leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, so that we all could be better informed as we continue to strive towards a better Guyana. On tonight's program, we want to talk a little about the extradition, and of course, we want to be able to talk about the current affairs that's been unfolding in Guyana. Guyana, as you know, has become very important to everyone, not only to us as Guyanese, but also to the entire world paying attention to Guyana. So it's a very important time in our nation's history, and equally important will be your role as the people, as the daughters, as the sons of Guyana, so that we could have an opportunity to reset or reshape the nation into the direction that it needs to go in. And that direction really is where Guyana could benefit all. We want to start tonight, our program tonight will start off with the extradition. I want to go first to Mr. GHK on this one because, as we all know, senior counsel tends to go straight towards the books. So I wanted to kind of articulate a position here on this extradition, but I want to start by saying to Mr. GHK that from the onset, Mr. GHK, seems like the extradition is totally flawed. Certainly, it seemed to be some sort of an missteps. I mean, one would think that our AG, having so much experience, knowledge, and being in this for so long, the entire process would have been much more prepared. Instead, we see a $150,000 bail each person, and of course, this is now events as just keeps unfolding. So I want to pause there and bring you in, Mr. GHK. What's your take on what transpired?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Singh, for having me on the program. Good to be here with you, Mr. Jonas. And again, my fellow Guyanese, wherever you are, tuned into this program. My pleasure to share with you. Extradition. The Mohammeds. By way of disclosure, you should know that I know Mr. Nazar Mohammed, the father, from my 3 years at the Guyana Gold Board. Never met, never spoke to the son, the leader of the Reinvest in Nationhood Party. Now, the first thing I want to say is why this big priority on extradition. The charges, as alleged, gold smuggling, that's against the people of Guyana. Tax evasion, the tax coffers of Guyana. And again, an alleged crime committed against the Guyanese people. Royalties not paid, tax not paid, tax evasion. And here it is that our crimes have been the center of the United States focus, the centerpiece of its extradition request. Yes, there's money laundering, and that is almost automatic. Wire fraud, mail fraud, that goes to the US statutes. But gold smuggling always existed here. Always existed here. PPP government, PNC government, whatever government. And we just sat on our hands with it, did nothing about it. And now that the Americans have dug and raised this up, OFAC sanctions, and U.S. federal grand jury in Florida, this extradition request has thrown us into some sort of confused state. I'm sure Mr. Jonas will speak to the treaty and the provisions of the law, but I'm saying from a layman's perspective and a common sense perspective, I would think that we would want to get our pound of flesh out of the Mohammeds first, before any extradition request could be entertained by our ruling political party, our government, and our judiciary. Gold smuggling, as alleged, has happened. Therefore, that becomes something to be dealt with here. The loss is here. The exposure is here. Tax evasion, the loss is here. Money laundering, we do not look well in terms of holding up our end of the bargain in terms of this whole CFATF regime, and so on and so forth. So, yes, the government has blundered in its haste to get this man, these alleged gold smugglers out of here pronto, and to really, is it really to get rid of two gold smugglers or to get rid of a political competitor that is already reported to have created a seismic shift in the political landscape, and has the potential to continue to do so come 2030, which might look like a long way off from here. The point is, I think, that the government has tangled its feet here in terms of the sequence. The sequence. It has its law, its attorneys coming and saying, again, Mr. Jonas may have some thoughts about this, coming here and saying, well, the evidence is about ABC. Well, where is the evidence? I remember the PNC in the elections petitions in 2020 talking about how they were robbed and they were cheated, but they had no evidence to present in court. So I see a parallel here, and it makes this country looks ridiculous. I go to one last point before I hand back to you. We must remember that Guyana is an independent, sovereign nation. Yet, as much as I respect and I call for the friendship, the special relationship between Guyana and America, I think that we have bent over too far backwards to accommodate just about anything that the Americans put before us. And for whatever reason, that some of them I think I know, and some I don't know at all. So really, this extradition request has been botched from the beginning, mishandled, and it makes us all look bad.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. GHK. Senior counsel, I'm sure you're going to walk us through the legal procedures that's involved in an extradition. I'm sure the viewers will want to get from a legal standpoint. But to Mr. GHK point, if you will be able to touch on that too, and if you permit me, Mr. GHK, I'll just paraphrase basically. The Guyanese need their pound of flesh. If it is their evasion of revenue that belongs to the people of Guyana, I believe what you're saying, Mr. GHK, is that Guyanese should be able to be accountable first to Guyana, then to a foreign nation such as the United States, who we are very friendly with. And obviously, we are very appreciative of what OFAC has been doing in bringing out these type of crimes, if indeed there were crimes that were allegedly towards this situation. So, Mr. Jonas?
Well, it's interesting both of you have pointed me to look at the rule book and give legal advice. And ironically, that is exactly what I didn't want to do tonight. I appreciated the common sense approach that GHK took, because that common sense approach accords with my view of how the system should work and how it's designed to work. It's difficult to explain it shortly, but here is the public policy concept that I hope people can think about. The laws of this country bind this country. The laws of America bind America. So we will not recognize in this country American laws as being effective and binding here. We have our own society, our own social contract, our own personal obligations to obey the law, drive on the left-hand side of the street, stop at the red light, hopefully stop at pedestrian crossings. Those are laws in Guyana imposed on us, and as part of the social contract, we should obey them. So in Guyana, breaches of the laws of Guyana should be dealt with by Guyanese courts. And if we can't do that, we're a failed state. Now, I don't say this as a criticism of the current government, because the fact is that our system has been eroded and has worn down and has gotten more slothful and more inefficient in a steady decline, not over 5 years or 10 years, but possibly since the 70s. And that is something that reflects not just on our leaders, but on us, on all Guyanese. So yes, I agree with GHK. If we are a real state, if we are a real country, and it is alleged that laws have been broken in Guyana, and there has been an unlawful export of gold smuggled out under cover of a tampered Guyana Gold Board and Guyana Revenue Authority seal, because that's what the indictments coming out of the state say, so that the gold can be sold internationally and the income from that sale not declared in Guyana, so that no taxes are paid. Whether it's true or not, that's what the indictment says. That's a crime in Guyana against the Guyana revenue in respect of Guyana raw materials alleged to have been committed by Guyanese living in Guyana. There's only a tiny element of this that conceivably is alleged to have taken place in the States, and that is that the indictment alleges, again, we don't know if it's true or not, that the proceeds of the sale of that gold passed through a banking system in Florida. That's all. That is the sole element. So no crime committed in the States, no tax evasion in the States, but because they are saying that money passed through a banking system in the States, the American judicial system claims to have the right under their laws to treat it as money laundering offenses and to jurisdictionally ask for the extradition of Guyanese. I think that the first obstacle must appeal to everybody. Everyone must understand this, that if a crime is committed in Guyana, the Guyana legal system should prosecute the crime. The punishment should be in Guyana, because this is where the offense took place and this is where the harm allegedly was felt. For me, when I saw on social media the loyalists crowing triumphantly that there was going to be an extradition, and then when I saw the DPP's office on instructions withdrawing the existing charges that had been laid against the Mohammeds, you gotta ask, well, why are you withdrawing charges? The only possible reason could be to smooth the extradition process. But that goes contrary to every aspect of our social contract, because our social contract requires us to obey the laws in Guyana and to be prosecuted in Guyana if we don't. So those same people who are crowing or triumphant, saying, hi, you're going to be extradited, are impliedly admitting the failure of the system which they are representing. They are saying to the countryman, we know that this system that we represent probably can't get a conviction, or probably is going to run so slowly that nothing will come of it, or probably can be undermined so that nothing will come of it. And therefore, because we ourselves don't have confidence in the system that we are representing, we prefer to send these people that we hate, who we feel have betrayed us, we prefer to send them to America, where there's a system that still exists. So we're a failed state. And that's embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. But I also want to focus on our population, on our Guyanese, because I haven't seen a single intelligent, incisive comment coming from any of the usual keyboard warriors to examine the ethics and the morality of what is going on, the motives behind these actions, why it is that with such alacrity a charge was brought, a charge was withdrawn. These are by the same people who went with police to the residence to seize cars that ostensibly were imported into Guyana illegally. Now, they're so enthusiastic to prosecute, and then with equal enthusiasm, with equal alacrity, clearly under instructions, withdraw those charges so that there can be a quick extradition. And on the flip side, the people who support the other side, none of them raise the question about the ethics and morality of folk who have been charged, whether rightly or wrongly, with some major tax evasion, and who also now are in the position that they are representing the system and taking position in Parliament. Nobody seems to care about the ethics and the right and wrong of things. People are siding with their own, and those other folk can go over a cliff, whether rightly or wrongly. I think that's a serious indictment on what our country has become and what the ethical ethos is in our country, in our population generally right now.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for that walkthrough. And Mr. GHK, clearly from the way events have been unfolding with the extradition process, one, it doesn't seem that the US is really that serious, because had the US been that serious of taking out the Mohammeds, it would have happened overnight. I mean, I take it the strength of the United States. No one needs to explain that. I can't ask Timothy Jonas this question, because the man is so straight I wouldn't even want to drive with him. If you see a bend, he probably wouldn't even turn. But I want to ask you this one. It was a backdoor deal made here where the Guyanese people themselves has been compromised again, because the Mohammeds have always indicated, and they've always been so confident in the outcomes of these cases. And there have been indication in the public domain about how much information they have. Is it something where there was a backdoor deal that, probably made, whereby the charges, these billions of dollars has been removed, Lamborghini, I mean, honestly, growing up, I love sports car. I'm still driving one actually. But the fact of the matter is that even if you use a different body and put it on, I mean, a Lamborghini body and put it on a different chassis, it wouldn't cost what these guys are declaring. So, GHK, do you feel that the Guyanese people again have lost out here in terms of, have they been compromised again because there's some sort of backdoor deal going? That's one part of my question. And my other question, it's very curious to see the amount of comments going against the AG when I'm not sure he's the one pulling the trigger. Is he the one that's really pressing for this extradition? Or the other people's pulling the trigger. So I'm a bit curious. I mean, it's just mixed signals coming out of all of this. What's your thoughts, Mr. GHK?
There are two things here. What you don't want to ask Mr. Timothy Jonas, senior counsel, you're bringing to me. That's one.
I'll
And
drive with you.
secondly, and
Did you hear what I
secondly,
say? If you're
I heard
driving with
you.
Timothy, if you're driving with Timothy Jonas, he will probably see a bend and still go straight. So you might as well avoid him driving you.
And secondly, I hear you about your admiration for sports cars. I too have them, but I can't afford to buy one. So I'm just a spectator. Now, seriously, folks, and this is serious stuff here. I heard Mr. Jonas speak about ethical compass and moral imperative. And I can't believe it's the same Timothy Jonas using those words in the context of our country. Because Mr. Singh here, he usually takes that line, and I have been doing that for a while now, here and off of here. But for the longest while, there's no erosion because there's nothing left to erode anymore. The ethics and morality of this country have never been so low. Not even in the days of Burnham, not even the days of House of Israel, not even the days of whatever, and the dark days and years of. So that's where we are. Now let's go to the alleged gold smugglers. Incidentally, I must say this. There were three of them. One was a government official who's reportedly, as alleged by OFAC, aiding and abetting. And one of the lines in that OFAC, the OFAC document, was in the extraction of natural resources. That sounds like gold to me and not bauxite. All right, so where did she disappear? How did that happen? So you talk about backdoor deal, and I'm going to back into that now. So we have the Mohammeds. They're under the microscope. They have their backs against the wall. From my time at the Gold Board, it was never said to my face because none of them dared to say it. And I'll say it here publicly. None of them in the gold community dared to say it to my face. They said it to the staff who went to inspect gold and do compliance review. Tell the man there, is we just run the economy? I say, you tell them to come and tell me that, right? And they control the economy of this country. And here's this one. And how much money they give the government. How much money they... So when you give that kind of money, and we go now to campaign financing laws that are there, that are kind of useless to me, whatever we have. And the EU have been calling for that in 2020, 2025. The Carter Center has tabled that. So here's this. Monies, these guys have boasted, not only the Mohammeds, of how much money, hundreds of millions, they have given to political parties. And not one, not one. So it was convenient, it was partnering, the best of partnering, to look the other way when gold smuggling was going on at many, many different levels. Before me, during my time, after my time. And I'll say it frankly, whatever was going on away from the Guyana Gold Board. But Men who give that kind of money have a lot of clout. They have a lot of pull. What is happening now in reverse in against them, in opposition to their interests, used to happen before with the gold community, the big players, movers and shakers, when they came up against law enforcement or they had some matter, whether it's a traffic incident or something, we heard about it. They boasted about it as much as the others try to keep it undercover. Now, I believe that that is one of the reasons why both the opposition and the government are so much against the disclosure of donors where campaign financing is concerned. We are saying that I am calling, others are calling, what use is a campaign financing law, existing or proposed, that does not have donor disclosure? I don't care what excuse you come up with. And so as long as those things are subsumed, they're concealed, then we will get people giving money, and it's not necessarily clean money, most likely dirty money, and they are well positioned to demand huge favors of government. I am not speaking about concessions and mining permits and so on. I am talking about things that involve violations of the law. I am talking about things where they come into these kinds of situations. Why do you think, gentlemen, that gold smuggling and tax evasion were under the carpet for so long? How do you, to your question, Mr. Singh, you have a Lamborghini or something that's a couple of scales downwards. What's it, a Range Rover or a Mercedes-Benz? Sorry, Mrs. Jonas, or a BMW. You go with a Lamborghini, and that number of millions of dollars for the valuation, Jesus Christ, the person cleaning the floor would know that number, something is terribly wrong about it.
Yeah.
So, and here's this, which customs officer, senior customs officer, is going to take the risk of allowing something that expensive to be assessed so cheaply? That
Yeah.
could, as you said, Timothy, that withdrawn charges are an indication that orders must have come from very high up. So I rope in the Honorable Attorney General now and say, he too is a creature of the system, and he's held hostage, so he has to go along with the flow if he's going to keep his political prospects alive and perhaps his job too. The fact of the matter is that these guys are not bit players. They are not extras. Whoever is alleged, whoever is not known at this time, who is not being named at this time, they are people who work the system to their advantage. They grease the system. They grease palms. They make donations in huge amounts that are not accounted for. And we end up where we end up, having these kinds of discussions and trying to dissect, well, what could have happened here? How did this happen in the first place? And now we end up talking about extradition.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Mr. GHK. And Mr. Jonas, certainly you're welcome to comment on that aspect of it. However, again, the Guyanese people are on the losing or the short end of the stick. I just want to read something for you, Mr. Jonas, and it's not segueing, but rather it's pegged towards the current conversation we're having. I noticed on VPAC Guyana, he posted today, VPAC calls for joint Guyana-US probe into $25 billion auto import irregularities. A recent Financial Intelligence Unit FRU report highlights a broken system. This is FRU, by the way, Mr. Jonas. Report highlights a broken system for importing cars into Guyana. If you're wealthy, you can access luxury vehicles largely tax-free. If you're not, you're forced to pay import taxes. I'll pause there on that. Then I'll just switch over to Travis Chase posted recently, I believe within the last 12 hours or so, a recording, an alleged recording of actually a recording allegedly of one of the very big auto dealers in Guyana, talking how he circumvents the system, so duties are undervalued. Here again, Mr. Jonas, Guyanese people getting the short end of the stick while they have to worry about day-to-day lives. You have all this flow of big money moving back and forth, and what is good for one is not good for the other. I mean, how do you tie all of this together to the Guyanese people? I mean, it's clearly the system is broken, etc. How do we get this over to them that, look, some people needs to be accountable for what's going on?
Okay, but we start in the conversation in the middle, aren't we? We're starting the conversation from the position of sheep in the flock who are quarreling because other sheep are finding ways to escape the strictures, the unfair rules that are oppressing all of us. The thing is that the system itself is unfair. So what is more egregious? What is more wrong? Is it more wrong to bribe a customs officer to bring in a vehicle at undervalue, or to use your position in Parliament to give yourself a duty-free concession for the vehicle? What's more wrong? We have 65 parliamentarians who walk into Parliament happily and claim a duty-free concession, so that if you're spending $20 million for an upper-end Land Cruiser, an ordinary Guyanese has to pay another 60 to 75 million on tax alone for that $20 million Land Cruiser. So you pass the law imposing that impossible tax on the sheep, the citizens, and in the same breath, at the same moment, you give yourself a waiver, a duty-free concession, because you're in Parliament. Who's the bigger thief? And if we're going to start talking ethics, and if we're going to start talking morality, we need to understand that the people who are imposing the laws, who are imposing the oppressive, onerous rules, they're no better than we are, and they're no different than we are. In fact, they're worse than we are. It is true that democracy creates leadership by the worst among us, because they can sit down and talk about Lamborghinis and talk about vehicle import dealers cheating the system. And they get to the newsroom in their duty-free Prados, and they drive back, and their families enjoy it, and they use different means to give themselves duty-free concessions on different vehicles for themselves, their families, and their friends. Who's the bigger thief? Because you do it legally, giving yourself a duty-free concession while imposing an impossible, onerous restriction on others, or because you bribe a customs officer? If we don't get a general sense of what is fair and what is right, we will never get it correct. We will never achieve what Guyana can potentially be.
Well, certainly we need to speak more to the Guyanese people in terms of holding those at the top accountable to some sort of a measurement that equates for a better way for everyone. Just a quick announcement. As you all know, Globespan has suspended its Monday's program with Dr. Rose. We will be continuing the Wednesday program. Next week in the United States, of course, is Thanksgiving. So next Wednesday is the 24th, the eve before Thanksgiving. So we prefer to not have a program that night. We will air a broadcast from a previous segment. We will be on December 3rd, December 10th, and then pause from that weekend on to January 16th. So we would resume January 16th. And all of this, of course, is over the holidays. So just to inform everyone, we are starting at 7 p.m. now, given the time change, so that everyone could be in tune to the changes happening due to the us coming out of daylight savings time. Mr. GHK, there was a report that came out today. It's pretty hot. Lots of people are talking about it. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I'm sure you did. This report that came out of the European Union. Do you mind taking 2 minutes or so and touch on that?
No, thank you. I can only touch on it because I got it, but I haven't gone through it. Before I go there, I just want to pick up on the last sentence from Mr. Jonas's commentary a moment ago. If we don't get it right, if we don't get a sense of what is right and what is fair, we'll never get it correct. If we don't abandon seeing the world of Guyana through racial and politically partisan lens, we'll be forever stuck where we are. Now, the EU report. The EU report, to some extent, is a mirror of the 2020 report. Some of the issues are there. Of the 8 recommendations, I think 6 are still outstanding. The priority recommendations. They sound old and worn. Misuse of state assets by the incumbents. Misuse of state media by the incumbents. Campaign financing. Constitutional reform. Serious attempts at bringing about genuine reform. Those are what I can remember there. Unfair advantage, undue advantage to the incumbents, meaning the ruling party. State assets, and on we go. And they did refer to, look, we've had these things outstanding for 5 years now, and it should be painful. And it should be troubling to us that we talk about democracy's torch being held aloft in Guyana, and yet we live in this darkened state where it's a lot of talk. The president is very good at that. The vice president has his own style at that, the second vice president. The attorney general thinks he's carved out a style that is a symphony. But the fact of the matter is that we have these things, serious issues that are staring us in the face. The census report, the other voices being heard, other voices being a part of the conversation. And the EU report speaks about peaceful and well run, which I agree with, which I think everybody on this program agrees with, especially those who were here in September, on September 1st, just before and just after. And what is fascinating and revealing at the same time is that the EU limited itself to peaceful and well run. When members of the press said, well, what about fair, sir? Well, there were some ladies there too in the team. Well, we really don't want to go there. What about unfair? They took a rain check. They just didn't want to go near fair and unfair. And I think for obvious reasons it would be immersing themselves too deeply in it. But that is what we want to know about these elections. We already knew about state assets and state media and campaign financing, etc., and all the implications of those, and those that are and they're mainly all negative, and all the other things that weren't done, all the recommendations that were made. My question is, why have these people here when we know then we are still going to go back and do the same thing. My thing is, if they can't speak to fair and unfair, then what kind of elections we have? And look, when nobody's walking back and going back and say, well, this was what happened. But I think 50 people were on the ground, not 550, and they were here before the elections and after the election, during the elections and slightly after. So they collected some level of evidence. There would have been conversations with other observer bodies. There would have been conversations, I think, with the resident embassies.
Yeah.
I can't see that not happening. And for them to balk, to resist commenting on fair and unfair as going too far or unfair, I think that says a lot here. And as I go through this thing, and I intend to write about 3-4 pieces about it, I'm sure there are some other issues that needs to be put out on the table.
Yeah. Yeah, quick comment from Kendra Paul. Mr. Timothy Jonas' comments are very insightful as opposed to the social media rhetoric. So very positive comment there. Tim, I believe what I kind of gathered from Mr. GHK that we, in the words of Leland, who sometimes are in Globespan, we go to the doll about this election process. It's flawed by some people view it that it's flawed. Some feel that it's very positive. I mean, it's okay, not positive. I'm using the wrong word. How we wait until the election process comes when we start to go through that motion of trying to correct what may be the flaws of the election process. Given the spotlight Guyana is in now internationally, I mean, do you think there's any way of the international community putting a little more teeth into their documents that they carve out and then they leave us with these documents, but nothing changes? We go back to the same thing. What's your thoughts on this, Tim?
I don't quite agree with GHK in this one. The elections were well run. That's what the people said. And then, as GHK points out, they highlighted the flaws, not in how the election was conducted, but in the run-up to the election, how the incumbent was able to use the state machinery and state finances in aid of its own election campaign to the exclusion of everybody else. Now, our memories are short, but I do remember Kemal Ramjatan saying somewhat dismissively back in 2015 when the Ranger administration was there that that is one of the privileges of incumbency. And that was the end of that discussion at that time. So again, we've missed the mark of right and wrong. But the reason, to my mind, that the European Union did not say fair is because if you've got all the money and you've got access to the state media, then it's not fair. So the number of votes counted reflected where people put their X. I'm quite satisfied that there wasn't enough doubt about that to raise any suspicion. So the votes as counted fairly, I use that word loosely, reflected what people voted for. And we saw for the first time in Ghana's history the removal of one of the two parties as leader of the opposition, as the largest opposition majority. So we had an astonishing outcome, but that outcome reflected how people voted. The reason it wasn't fair is because the incumbent was able to use the state machinery, Kaisuko buses, money, NCN, the other state media, the television and the radio, and of course Chronicle, the RAG, to push its own agenda and to stigmatize the opposition. So most of the comments and accusations against the Mohammeds, for example, were seen loudly, glaringly displayed on the state media. Whereas the very mediocre comments by the incumbents, the very ordinary statements that they made, were elevated to some kind of deification level as if we were listening to wizards and experts and geniuses. So that was part of it. The effect, whether it swayed any minds or changed the votes of very many people, we will never know. But it can't be fair if you got all the money and I don't have any. And we did see the result of that. Even in the paraphernalia that the different parties put up, you saw thousands of red T-shirts, all of them being fed, all of them getting money. You saw public servants being told they had to come to rally meetings and being given a red shirt and being afraid not to. So that was something, in fact, that I didn't see mentioned, but no one can deny it. You just got to go in the ministry and ask. People who are employed by the government were told you got to turn up, and here's your red shirt. So yes, it was abused, and there will never be transparency in it. And because it's cyclical every 5 years, there's been a huge victory, and no one will think about it in 5 years because you don't want to tighten it up. You want to keep that benefit of incumbency. You want to keep that kind of loose, shaky machinery that you can manipulate in a pinch if you need to, as there was an attempt to manipulate in 2020. So if the intention is a good system, airtight, foolproof, predictable, changes will be made. But I think we fool ourselves if we tell ourselves that's the intention. The intention isn't a good, transparent system. The intention is perpetuity of one party in power, and by the other side, getting into power and then staying in power forever. That's what the intention is.
Yeah, and certainly it's a topic that we need to discuss further with much more expansion on it. I want to switch a little to Mr. Ivor Lloyd. He wrote a book. He was kind enough to support Globespan and have asked us to run this commercial. He sponsored this commercial, and certainly we want to be able to support him. So I'm asking all of our viewers that this book is available on Amazon. You can certainly order his book. Devin, would you like to go to that commercial for Professor Griffith?
Oil is transforming Guyana, and the entire Caribbean is watching. But beneath the promise of prosperity lies a deeper risk, the rising threat of climate change. Oil and climate change in Guyana's wet neighborhood explores this high-stakes intersection of economics, politics, and the environment. Author Ivor Lloyd Griffith takes you inside the region's oil ambitions and reveals how climate vulnerability could shape its future. This isn't just a policy debate. It's about coastlines vanishing, livelihoods shifting, and choices that will define generations. Packed with insight, data, and sharp analysis, this book is essential reading for anyone who cares about the Caribbean's future. Are we on a path to progress or peril? Dive into the story that affects us all. Oil and Climate Change in Guyana's Wet Neighborhood by Ivor Lloyd Griffith.
Folks, Oil and Climate Change on Amazon.com. Do support his book. He's a good supporter of Globespan as well. The government has been making tremendous amount of announcements. Every day you have announcements coming out. A lot of them is also very good announcements if they're actually materialize. Certainly, it would affect really positive change for the country. I mean, literally they're firing on all cylinders, particularly President Ali. Timothy Jonas, one of the announcements that came out in the last couple of weeks, I believe, was something that you narrated very well on Globespan about a month or two ago, I believe. The importance of a comprehensive immigration policy. Now, an announcement was made subsequent to that bombing at the gas station, and of course, how important it is for the country to look towards an immigration policy. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Timothy Jonas, that you would, throw in as an additional comments that what this immigration policy should look like for Guyana?
I gotta take a minute there, Nohar, because that's a very big question. There are a couple of things we gotta recognize. First of all, I am pleased to hear that the government, maybe a bit tardy, but made that decision. They recognized the problem. Perhaps this was a catalyst that forced recognition of the problem. But Guyana's landscape has transformed. If you walk down the road in Georgetown on the East Bank on the East Coast, anywhere over the river, you hear foreign languages being spoken, Portuguese, Spanish. The estimates are that there are over 50,000 Venezuelans alone in Guyana. And I don't know how many Brazilians, but lots. And this is a country where we only got 700,000 Guyanese. When you speak to people in the business community, you learn very quickly what good, solid, reliable employees the Cubans are. The Venezuelans, their work ethic. The Brazilians, what they think about work and how they conduct themselves. They are integrating into the workforce. When you go to sit at a restaurant, I went to fill up my car with petrol the other day, with diesel, sorry. And as I got out of the car, the pump attendant, very pleasant lady, said, "Cubano?" And she spoke no English, and I was totally taken aback. They're integrating, they're here. Now, that's a good thing. I'll tell you why it's a good thing. It's a good thing because when the northern companies come here to invest, they bring with them their work ethic. So the safety requirements, the employee labor relation requirements, the quality of work, quality of product requirements, the quality of building and premises requirements, safety in the workplace requirements. Those are things that we've been glossing over and ignoring. And I've given the example before of men going with chainsaws in the timber industry, in forest concessions, owned by large reputable Guyanese companies, and cutting down trees wearing rubber slippers. Inexcusable things like that. So we are seeing, and we're especially seeing it in the oil and gas industry, very great care being taken in safe clothing and that kind of thing. And we're learning from it. And the expectation of the workforce is rising as a result. And that's a good thing. Another good thing is that a lot of these people are coming from societies which are intact. Guyana society is not intact. The brain drain is a real thing. And we lost our artists, our musicians, our educated people, our teachers, our nurses. We keep losing them. We've been losing them for 40 years. And what we've got left is thugs driving taxis, driving minibuses, bullies on the road, in the business community, people who can't be trusted, who are happy to pay a bribe. So if the influx of foreigners are the kind of people who can help to restore our society, that's a good thing. What we need to guard against is undesirables. The people who come must come with a job or with money. They must be registered and they must pay their taxes. They must not be benefiting from the tottering, sad infrastructure that we have. So free medical care, free education, that must be for Guyanese. Guyanese must be benefiting from the taxes that these people pay. They must pay for their visa. They must pay yearly for their visa. We want them. We want them to have a good opportunity to invest here and to work here, but they must pay for it because the supply and demand issue has changed. And if we find them breaking the law, they should be heavily fined and they should be deported with no chance of coming back. And there has to be an ironclad, strict system to do it. And you know, I talk about systems, and we can't even prosecute somebody for a Lamborghini. We got to extradite them. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do. But I congratulate the government on taking the first step. I hope to see it done in a systematic way. I hope to see ID cards provided. Another good thing that the government has done, I don't like how they awarded the contract, but I think it was important to be done, to implement a system of ID cards that are electronically recognized, that can be used throughout every commercial transaction, including with the GRA. The immigrants, the people who come into work here, should similarly have an ID card. It won't say G for Guyanese, but might say C for Cuban or V for Venezuelan. Identify where they come from, because Guyanese need to be first-class citizens in our country. So we show our ID card at a hospital, we should get free medical care. They show theirs, they must pay for it. That's how it has to be. And if we can do that, and if we can implement that so that we have desirables here who are working, contributing, paying their taxes, bringing their families, Nohar, I would challenge Guyanese who don't like what I'm saying. How many of you know someone who has a piano and can play a piano or any musical instrument? We have lost our middle class. We have lost the element that makes a house a home. We have lost that beauty that exists and should exist in a modern society. And these people can help to restore it, can help speed the process, because the fact is, as Guyanese, we are hardworking. We know we were poor 20, 30 years ago. We know we have an opportunity. So we are trying hard. We're sending our children to private school and that kind of thing. But we're also continuing to cut corners dishonestly in business, in work, and in most environments. And that has to change. But we cannot allow bad elements to come into the country. We have to control that process.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. And I also want to add to that, good men like yourself, GHK, and so many others also in the country that are pretty much giving up their self-interest so that we could bring back that level of society within Guyana. So hats off to men like you, guys like, many of us that's outside and not facing the same things that you guys are facing down there, but are um, willing to stick to it so that Guyana could become a better place and bring back what was before. Mr. GHK, you're welcome to comment, take a minute on that part of it. But another fantastic announcement that came out of President Ali was that when he mentioned about the importance of the church, the mosque, the temples to play a role in helping to build Guyana morality. I'm just paraphrasing here. On the morality basis, he's calling out the church, he's calling out the mosque, he's calling out the temples. And again, I want to stress these are really good announcements, but at this point, they're only announcements. They have not been able to sort of evolve into a meaningful way forward. So, Mr. GHK, have you seen anything on that part of it, of anything evolving from that announcement of the church's temple and mosque building on morality for the country?
Before I go there,
We could hear you.
can you hear me?
Yep, we could hear you, we could see you.
Oh, you can. Sorry. Thought I lost you there for a moment. I touched something on the screen. Before I go there, I'd like to just weigh in on the immigration topic. As you folks know, I was an economic migrant in the United States for decades, and I am a remigrant here. So when I see a Venezuelan or a Cuban on the street, and I see them right next door, the government used to have them working on a construction project. There is a huge building going up, and you hear the language. And these guys are hard workers. We welcome them. We have a shortage of skilled labor. We need these people. We are losing people hand over fist yearly through migration, through emigration. So and our economy is ballooning all the time, and the oil economy and those businesses that support it. So we need these people. I went to buy an appliance recently, and it was a huge one, and it was on a big store, and you had quite a few of these foreigners working there. And where people may say, "Oh, they come for take away with job," no, I look upon them as people who want to make an honest dollar and they put in honest time, whereas some of us may not want to do that. So, notwithstanding Timothy's comment about Guyanese being hardworking, they are. Oh, I know that. So, we must have the rules that account for them. We must recognize them, and they must get, and we must get from them. And I hear about taxes, etc. But we can build a base there. There's so many other things that this country needs. Now, in terms of the president, great call, no question about it, about morals and civics and this type of education from the ground up in the mandirs and the mosques and the temples and churches. How can that be wrong for a leader to say? I will add these things: morals, ethics, principles, honor has to start with the political class. The president has to be el numero uno in this respect. Even his detractors, even his opposition must be able to say under their breath, aside from the politics, it is a straight man. This is a man of whatever. And unless they can say that, and I can say that, then he may not be the fittest person to talk about that. But aside from, so my point is that the president, the prime minister, the opposition leader, they have to be the standard bearers for morals and principles in this country. Indeed, head teachers and school mistresses and parsons and pandits and mulvis. Yes, but they have been doing that for a while. But they must not only be appealed to when they can come out, those ones who can come out and endorse you. The religious realm should not be looked upon as a playing field, as another political opportunity. I think that we need to be serious about these issues about morals and ethics, because then we will have standards. Then the policies that we put on paper, they will be followed up by procedures and practices that make this country into a better place, our public service a better place, our police a better place, our media a better place, because we have something to which we are measured against and which we are held accountable. Yes, it's a great call. Yes, it's a call that I endorse 150%. But I think that the president has to be the torch bearer in this. He cannot be looked upon as a man who speaks from two sides of his mouth, a man who speaks to the moment, a man who speaks to the crowd, a man who speaks to what is convenient to his interest. These things are generational and they are generation lasting. We hear about bullying in schools. We hear about a child, what was it, a 6-year-old, correct me, Tim, whose tongue was bitten somewhere and bullying somewhere else, and some other one seriously wounded. What is happening in our schools? We had bullying before, but where's the breakdown? We have lost the best and brightest in this country. So we need to regroup, and we need to look first within ourselves and say, how can I make a difference? Look, anybody could have spoken to me, anybody, regardless of color, as a child, even now, well into my 60s. But can I dare, and I'm asking Timothy Jonas, who lives here, would he dare to take the risk of speaking to a strange child on the road and say, hey man, don't do the thing wrong there, because you will get a cussing. So we really need to revisit this whole business about morals and ethics and civics. Let us start that teaching. Let us indoctrinate our children about right and wrong, because then that seeps into our business practices, our political practices, our legal practices, our medical practices, our police practices. This will come through. And I think I fully support something like this, even if it's half genuine.
Yeah. Timothy Jonas, I don't want to take away anything that Mr. Jonas has, GHK has talked about, but I really would prefer that you speak to the Guyanese people. What are their responsibilities? What are their role in bringing up the morality level? And Mr. GHK talked a lot about the president, leadership, etc., etc. But I really would want you to shift that towards the Guyanese people. They have a responsibility here as well. A minute or two on this, and then we'll move on to another topic.
Hearing GHK discuss it, and I think it's important not to be glib, because in a society that's fractured, it's very difficult to do the right thing. I mean, you talk about businesses, ethical business. If I'm selling shoes and you're selling shoes, and you pay the customs man a bribe to get your shoes in without any duty, and I stand up right and pay my duty, I'm out of business because you can sell your shoes cheaper than me. If the police on the road stops you and you know that paying a bribe sees you on your way very quickly, but because he expects that bribe, if you don't pay a bribe, you might spend 3 hours in a police station. It's very difficult to spend 3 hours in a police station when the alternative is so easy. So it's not easy to do the right thing because our system has been so undermined and corrupted that it only accommodates you when you don't do the right thing. If the drug dealer offers you a better exchange rate for your Guyana dollar because you need US money to buy your merchandise to bring into the country, and he's laundering his money and he's happy to buy your Guyana dollars and give you US at a favorable exchange rate. If you refuse that and you insist on paying the correct exchange rate at the bank, then you lose economically and your business fails. We've reached a stage where the system is so geared for corruption. If you refuse to pay at the customs, they don't even process your paperwork. So it's not just a simple thing of, well, absorbing the loss and paying. But you got to wait longer than everybody else because it is known that if your customs declaration form gets lost in a drawer for 2 or 3 hours, eventually you'll come around. So how do you overcome this? How do you decide that you're going to do the right thing? You got to be in a small minority to have the luxury to do the right thing. And yet I'm seeing it. I am seeing people driving on the road and driving courteously, stopping to let you out, stopping for the pedestrian crossing to let pedestrians pass. I'm seeing people responding calmly to situations as if they're waging a personal battle against the horror story that is day-to-day existence in our society. You know, it's really difficult to do. But every time you see someone trying to do the right thing, it gives you a little spark of hope, as if you're becoming a team. You found a kindred spirit, and it's not hopeless. But it is difficult because in the corporate world, in the work environment, if the people around you are dishonest, if the people around you are lazy and aren't pulling their weight, or if they're corrupt and finding some way to skim off the system, you're vulnerable. So it's hard to do, but it's got to be done. And it has to start with good systems and good leaders, not just at the political level, but where you work at the management level, where you go to shop at the commercial level. And I don't know how it can be done, But the one thing I will agree with GHK is you really have to do the best in your own house, taking the mote out of your own eye, and hope that by your example and by the example of the few around that you are seeing doing the same thing, that something changes. But it's a long haul. It really is difficult because our society is structured. In the 1980s, when flour was illegal and people used to smuggle flour in from Suriname, and people used to smuggle goods in suitcases into Tamari and bribe the customs folk there. That is when we learned that we had to be clever to break the law, and it stopped being wrong to break the law, and the laws became more unfair. It's a vicious cycle. Somehow it got to be changed. I can't tell you that I can give you the solution in a 15-minute talk.
To those few that Timothy Jonas and GHK refer to that are taking the higher road and doing the right thing, both from an ethical and a moral standpoint, there's a few, but I know I could tell you this as a word of encouragement. Jesus did say that the road is narrow and only a few will take it. So be encouraged. One stone build Rome, one good Guyanese will build a better Guyana. Folks, all love to all of our viewers. I really want you guys to support buyfromone.com. Now, buyfromone.com is really built around many of the Guyanese and Trinidadians have left New York. They've moved to Florida, they've moved to California, Las Vegas, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia. So buyfromone.com, you could buy all of your West Indian groceries if you want your curry powder, if you want your fish, if you want your chow mein. You could purchase all of that on buyfromone.com. And also, buyfromone.com would ship you all your cook food, your curries, your rotis, and your all the different West Indian food, even the seven curry they would ship to you. So go on buyfromone.com, support this company. They've been supporting Globespan programs since the inception. And another company that has been supporting Globespan initiative is Curry Roti Box. They're located on 103rd Street on Liberty Avenue in Little Guyana. And they at Curry Roti Box could deliver their food in Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Long Island. And you could get it on Uber or you go on curryrotibox.com. They also do catering. They cater both to Guyanese and Trinidadian style food. And last is Travelspan. Travelspan has its main office in New York, offices in Trinidad, Guyana. Stay tuned next week. Travelspan will be making some very big announcement for its 2026 programs, but certainly for your airline tickets, your hotel packages, your escorted tours to Dubai, to India, South Africa, Europe, Mediterraneans. You could get all of that at Travelspan. The New York number is 718-845-0437. You have a Riverton office, you have a Rose Hall office, you have the North Road office in Georgetown, you have an office out in Chaguanas and an office out in Val Park. So support these companies. These companies are the ones supporting Globespan and certainly being behind the initiatives that we have been taking. I want to switch it up a little. I want to talk a little about some of the big expenditure projects. The most recent one that was announced is the data center. Now, a data center with 100 megawatts, which pretty much constitutes about 45% of our electricity in Guyana. This data center will probably cost anywhere from 2 to 4 billion Guyanese dollars. And while it's really forward thinking, one needs to really truly assess if there is a feasibility study for this program and if it's really way beyond our reach at this point, given the fact of where we at with the population in terms of their income and their standard of living. But I want to pause there in the data center and just talk a little. I want to peg it towards the situation that we have next door. Venezuela. It seems very clearly, Mr. GHK, that with or without Maduro, that the Venezuelan oil will be in the open market. And if the Venezuelan oil comes on the open market, you're talking about the largest producer. Our budget is pegged at, I believe, $72 a barrel. Current price right now for the sweet crude is about $65 a barrel. So right away we have a downward trend. Notwithstanding some cyclical spikes, uh, keeping in mind if it is, or when not if, when the Venezuelan oil comes on the open market, prices will continue to be depressed. How would this, what would you say, coming from a finance background, the effects this would have on the Guyanese economy in terms of where we are at, particularly pegging our budget at $72 a barrel?
Well, first of all, there's a fear of oil oversupply. OPEC has more or less reversed almost all of its restrictions, and OPEC Plus have also not been left back in that race to reverse its previous production cuts. So those are feeding into the market. Now, I heard you say $65, and I was looking at some charts recently, and I think West Texas Intermediate closed today below $60 momentarily at $59 a barrel. Now, oversupply, demand was stronger in September, stronger than a year ago, September. But fears of oversupply and actual oversupply is hanging over the market, and it's weighing heavily on market sentiment. So that's where that is, and that will have an effect, a dampener on oil prices. Our budget, our econ is predicated on $72 a barrel. I think that oil will continue to go downwards. Venezuelan oil coming into the marketplace, whatever number of barrels, and it will be several 100,000 barrels for a start, that is going to have an impact. Yes, some sanctions are still there on Russia, and we're watching to see how this thing will play out with India and Russia and tariffs. But I feel that, and I'm linking a couple of things here. One, you spoke about that AI data center in Wales, I think. And our vision, good visions, I would say, good visions, but maybe a little too early. We've got that. We've got the Palmyra to Molson Creek Road, 604 million US dollars. We've got the Berbice Port, 285 million US dollars. We've got the Georgetown modernization. That is a huge project, and as a Georgetown resident, I welcome it. But that's going to cost a pretty penny. That's going to cost a couple of $1 billion. We just bought, we stood at $7.7 billion in debt. We just inked a deal with Suriname, which I think was a kind of a stalking horse, to borrow $1 billion US for the next 5 years. I think we're going to end up with $900 million of that, and Suriname gets 100. But the fact is, we are adding, you add those things. The Berbice thing, that's 900 million US. The Georgetown, which I think is going to be about several billion Guyana, that 2 to 4 billion you're talking about there. And so you go down that line, AI centers, ports, airport expansion to continue, and you're seeing that borrowing will have to continue. Spending is keeping a pace, if not increasing. I haven't spoken about Silica City and what may be coming up in the budget. I think we need to factor in where oil prices could be. I've heard the vice president say, well, listen, be careful. Oil prices are going to are not in the healthiest of places, or not indicating the healthiest of destinations right now. So having said that, being aware of that, and I'm sure he's aware of more, I think there needs to be a more conservative approach to, one, budgeting, two, borrowing, three, spending. Well, the budgeting and spending, they're all intertied here. We factor in what could be a best case for Venezuela and not such a best case for us in terms of its oil being a contributor on the war market. So what that could be doing to prices, because we talk about debt to GDP ratio, and that's wonderful. It's healthy as it stands, but 50 to 60% of that GDP does not touch the local economy in terms of its impact. So you take that out, and in a dung oil market, you're getting hit. You really going to see what debt service is like and where our economy should have been, but is not. So I would say, got to factor Venezuela, got to slow down on that borrowing. You got to slow down on some of these visionary projects. They're good, but focus on completing what you've got. Look, the GRA just said we are half-staffed to manage the Petroleum Revenue Department, to manage Exxon, tax audits and review and whatever else they've got to do there. And so we are shortchanging ourselves. Let us come to grips. We just talk about migrants. Let us come to grips with what we have before us. Be circumspect about borrowing and spending, and so set our budgets and our economy for a sustained path instead of this spectacular growth, which frankly is not sustainable. And the economist in Bharat Jagdev knows this.
Thank you, Mr. GHK. And before I go over to Mr. Timothy Jonas, I just want to make a comment to all the people in the diaspora. I know within 3 to 4 days of this program, we probably have 5, 6, 7,000 people that will look at this program, mainly on YouTube. And from my understanding, they're well-educated people, folks that are in the judiciary, successful business people, folks that have made an impact in the diaspora, wherever they're at, be it the UK, Canada, United States. I want to encourage all of you that Guyana is at a point where we could be able to affect a very positive change to the country. Many of those in Guyana may not have the voice, they would have the thoughts, but may not be able to verbalize their thoughts of being fearful of whatever they may be conscious of, be it victimization or any other fear that they would have. So I want to encourage the diaspora, the type of money that is passing through Guyana and these sort of big projects that are being announced. And yes, they're forward-thinking projects, but at the same time, is it really helping the Guyanese people to enjoy the level of benefits that could come from this oil and gas economy? And if it's not, certainly you in the diaspora, the onus is on you, the responsibility is on you to turn and help our country, help our fellow people. By having a voice, you're well educated, you have the experience, you've had tremendous amount of accomplishment wherever you're living. Contribute back towards Guyana. Having said that, Timothy Jonas, a lot has been said there. We're talking about if President Trump wants to have his way, he would probably love to see oil at $35 a barrel. But indications are oil prices will continue to come down. Yet we have these big ticket items. I haven't heard anything about any feasibility study on the data center, but an agreement has already been signed. That data center could be anywhere from 2 to 4 billion Guyana dollars, including a grid to distribute. That data center could pull 45% of the Guyana electricity. I mean, we know where we are with blackouts and all of that already. So here we have this bulk of money coming in. And of course, Mr. GSK referred to our debts of over $7 billion, I think is what he said. I mean, how do we make sense of all of this, Mr. Timothy Jonas? How do we try to put this in perspective for the people to understand?
Yeah. We know that a few years ago, the government used its majority in parliament to push up the debt ceiling so it could borrow more. And there's no doubt, although it's not advertised, that the spending we are seeing is taken from loans, is taken from that borrowing, that increased debt ceiling. And I rather suspect, although I don't know, that the collateral, the security, is future earnings from oil and gas. So we may well be digging holes right now, hoping that future earnings from oil and gas will fill those holes. I don't criticize the government for that. We have deteriorated to such an extent over the past 50 years since independence that we needed some serious emergency action. And we are seeing serious investment all over the place. I think that what needs to be looked at much, much more carefully, corruption aside, is how the money is being spent. I agree with you on that, Noah. For me, the litmus test is, will a private investor put his money into it? If a private investor is not willing to put his money into it, it's probably not going to work, and the government should not be going into business. So a data center, invite any private investor to come and do it. Give them tax holidays, give them incentives. If they come in to do it, great. But the government should not be going into business. Now, we are a country with a large, very fertile agricultural belt. It's always been the backbone of our economy. We're a country with expansive timber. It's always been a backbone. Minerals. One of the difficulties that we've had is getting our raw materials to market. So getting our raw materials to a place where there can be value improvement, a factory, a mill, a town, and then exporting it to a market abroad. I really would like to see our free money from oil spent on infrastructure that encourages that. GHK was talking about the Berbice Bridge. I suspect he meant the Quarantine River Bridge going over to Suriname. That's going to be very expensive. I've heard talk about it. I've even heard whispers that the government is bearing the whole cost. I asked the question, yes, it would be lovely to be able to drive down to Paramaribo. I'm a man, I like a holiday, and I like to see new views. But Suriname offers what we offer: timber, minerals, agriculture. So is there a benefit from increased trade with Suriname? Or would our money be better spent expanding and developing the road to Brazil, knowing that Brazil is begging for a road route to our harbors so that it can access the Caribbean Sea and bring its products through our country in a way that we can make very, very profitable for us? I would prefer to see us going to Brazil. I hear you about the harbor in the Berbice River, and I ask the question, in terms of exports of products, do we think that it is easier for Berbice products to get to Georgetown to be exported, or for Essequibo products from Pomeroon to cross the Essequibo River to get to Georgetown to be exported? And where do we really want to put a harbor with a port of entry that can, with a customs facility that can deal with import and export of people and goods? That is critical. We know that goods are leaving the Pomeroon area, going to Trinidad, going to the islands for sale. It's those small fledgling self-sufficient enterprises that we need to be inculcating and supporting. The grandiose ideas that some salesman comes to sell you, that the government must be involved in this business or that business or the other business, that needs to be looked at very, very carefully. I feel government should be spending its money in infrastructure to safeguard or sea defense, to help agriculture, to help access to mining areas, to help access to agricultural producing areas, and then should not be getting into the business of value added, but should be encouraging investors to deal with things like food preservation and canning and that kind of thing. And the government should also be looking at harbors and ports of entry in Essequibo, as well as Berbice, so that the products that we know Essequibo is coming up with, they can be incentivized. I think that's where the focus should be, not data. I'm sorry, Noah, we have to understand what our limitations are. In Taiwan, they make microchips. We are never going to be able to compete with microchips. So because something sounds fancy doesn't mean we should be jumping at it. We should see where our strengths are. And our strengths are with production of primary products. And everyone is proud. We're the only country that can feed itself. That's what we're talking about, production of primary products. And that's where we should focus, and that's where we should support.
And I love your comment. I mean, on the litmus test. If a private investor is willing to go about doing it without the government subsidy or government involvement, that in itself will speak volume. But yeah, a data center too, Timothy Jonas and GHK, and to all our viewers, a data center of that size would require yearly maintenance anyway from 100 to $200 to $300 million, and the amount of energy that will take up from us. So it is forward thinking. However, I'm not sure it's present thinking. I really like the ideas that you just proposed there, Timothy Jonas, on developing areas that which really is our strength. Movement of goods and services will certainly help smaller communities because they themselves could cultivate and be able to be a part of this new economy. Gentlemen, as we come into closing, I want to read a comment by Mr. Saley. How come there is no PPP representative here with this naysayers? GHK is on stew and he stewed on you, Mr. GHK. But I want Mr. Seeley to know that uh, we the other person that was invited to be on this program tonight was Mr. Christopher Ram. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be on, but we do time to time invite representative from all different political parties. Normally, we like to have them on if there's another political party representative on at the same time. We kind of encourage a more diverse conversation. So, gentlemen, we're going into the holiday seasons next month. Guyana is coming far away. There's a window of opportunity here. Maybe this window of opportunity will be for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I don't know. I wish it could be on and on and on perpetually. But whatever it is, if it's 5 years, 25 years, every Guyanese need to benefit from this. So I want to go to Mr. GHK for his closing comments. Mr. GHK.
Well, I thank you again. And to go backwards, I hear both of you, and countries operate, and it comes straight out of the textbooks, something called comparative advantage. And we need to look for where our strengths are and leverage those so we can capitalize on those. Going backwards, we've got to I wouldn't be surprised if our debt ceiling is raised again in Parliament. The advantage is there for the government to do so, but we need to really come to grips about what we want to do, what level we want to have with our debt, given the surrounding circumstances, forces, Venezuela, supply glut, and what that could mean. I mean, we always have to keep Iran in the picture, and it's kind of stirring a little bit there. Going back to taking a step back now to morality and civics and ethics calls from the president. I think that's a wonderful thing, but he has to exemplify that. Parents have to insist on to teach and then maintain and insist on that standard. And so when their children go to church or to these religious places, they already have some of that discipline inculcated in them. One of the things I notice in the churches, at least the bigger ones, is that there are so few young people there. There are people of my age group and below, but that 10 to 20 year, they're very scanty. Coming back now to where we started, so it's a good call on the president's part, but this is the all hands on deck situation if we are going to retrieve our country. And coming back to where we started on extradition, I hope I'm holding this book right, but I think it's something that Guyanese should be familiar with. And especially that this here, the writing below the title, License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice. That's the U.S. Department of Justice, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, listening and viewing. I think it talks about what happened with Enron, what happened with Arthur Anderson, and down the line. The writer is a former U.S. prosecutor, served under different administration, 3 different U.S. attorneys, and it's really eye-popping in terms of how departments can be weaponized from internally, and what are the consequences on lives and families and companies on these things. In leaving, I say to my Guyanese in the American diaspora, do have a happy Thanksgiving. I don't know if I'll be back in December, and Christmas is a little bit far away, but Merry Christmas to you and your families, and the best for 2026. Thank you for having me here.
And Mr. Sheikh Abraham posted, "Good night, gentlemen. Just tuned in. My concern, why rush the bill Suriname Bridge when we should try bridging the Essequibo River first, don't you think?" Timothy Jonas, your closing comments?
To that gentleman, I would like to say that we do need to find a way for farmers to have much easier access by way of road to the market. It's an increasing problem, and it's not going to be resolved by a bridge to Suriname, I agree. I would like to give credit to the government for the drainage program that they've recently started. I'm sorry that the mayor and city council weren't given the material to do it independently, autonomously. As you know, I have been an advocate for fixing the system of rates and taxes so that the town councils and the NDCs can be financially autonomous and do what they were designed to do on an independent basis. That has not been done. I would like to see it done, but we had a crisis, and we have a crisis of drainage in the city. And as I've said before, it's politically sexy to build a bridge. Everybody can see it and take pictures and say how wonderful it looks. It's less sexy to dig a drain, because that visually is not so appealing and pictures don't work as well. But for that reason, I want to extend my appreciation for that move, that the drainage system in Georgetown is being cleaned. It's not being modernized. It's just being restored to how the British had it when it was handed over to us at independence. But that is a good first step. I would like to encourage that focus be looked at the Sussex Street coca and the Munishwar coca, because that's where problems exist. And unless you can get large quantities of water out to the Demerara River, you're not really helping by cleaning the drains, which haven't been cleaned for at least 40 years. But it is a good first start, and I want to give kudos for that.
Good. Good. So I just want to say to everyone, to all our viewers, the importance of the Guyanese people to be a part of the narrative, be a part, let your voice be heard, be a part of this change. I really would like to thank all of you. I thank Devin Bissoon, Timothy Jonas, and GHK. And to you, all the viewers, thank you for tuning in with us, and certainly we would see you. I believe I will be back on December, well, I guess that first Wednesday in December. Next week will be Thanksgiving Eve. We will take next week off. We would be running a previously aired program. So all of you, good night very much. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Have a good evening, gentlemen. A pleasure.
Good evening, everybody.